Recording now. And it's May 16th, 2024. I'm Kelly Dumar. Welcome to the monthly Journal of Expressive Writing Open Mic. We are so excited tonight to be featuring poet Nadia Colburn, and we will be getting to her feature in just 1 minute. But first, I really like to, as many of you know, open our evening, our community, really, because we are a community, and we certainly are a community while we are here tonight. I like to open our community by reading a poem for all of us. And tonight I have chosen, it's an excerpt from A Litany by Mark Strand. There is an open field, I lie down in a hole I once dug, and I praise the sky. I praise the clouds that are like lungs of light. I praise the owl that wants to inhabit me, and the hawk that does not. I praise the mouse's fury, the wolf's consideration. I praise the dog that lives in the household of people and shall never be one of them. I praise the whale that lives under the cold blankets of salt. I praise the formations of squid, the domes of Meandra. I praise the secrecy of doors, the openness of windows. I praise the depth of closets. I praise the wind, the rising generations of air. I praise the trees on whose branches shall sit the cock of Portugal and the Polish cock. I praise the palm trees of Rio and those that shall grow in London. I praise the gardeners, the worms, and the small plants that praise each other. I praise the sweet berries of Georgetown, Maine, and the song of the white-throated sparrow. I praise all manner of shade, that which I see, that which I do not. I praise those who have made of their bodies final embassies of flesh. I praise the moon for suffering men. I praise the sun, its tributes. I praise all for nothing because there is no price. I praise the motive of praise by which I shall be reborn. I praise the morning whose sun is upon me. I praise the evening whose son I am. Thank you, Mark Strand. And now I would like to introduce Nadia, looking for my notes. There it is. This is a quote from the poet Camille T. Dungy, who wrote Soil, the Story of a Black Mother's Garden, about Nadia's book. I Say the Sky. Beautiful book with a beautiful cover. Camille T. Dungy says, from the opening poem and on, through this glorious book, Nadia Colburn strikes the difficult balance between celebrating the splendor of the world we inhabit and acknowledging the grief and devastation that none of us can escape. As much a book of love songs as a book of elegies, I Say the Sky is a heart-opening and mind-sharpening collection. I'd like to add what Jimmy Santiago Baca, author of A Place to Stand, says. Colburn connects words to earth, body to family, and family to nature. Here, language is sacred. Uttering a word, composing a line, writing a stanza is a prayer of joy, even if the context is loss. Even loss can be an occasion to be grateful. Nadia has given poetry a breath that revives it, that urges others to see deeper and reclaim their humanity. and from Annie G. Rogers, professor of psychology, author of The Unsayable, The Hidden Language of Trauma. She says, in Colburn's Poetics, a pinpoint of memory foreshadows an unshakable sense of dislocation, the strangeness of inhabiting a body and a world in which we can never be just one thing. All the while, the ineffable, even the unbearable, runs to meet joy. Reading these poems, certain load-bearing words, stones, hands, a voice, the sky, to name a few, orchestrate a controlled music that surprises us and sends us back to read them again and again. What more could one ask of poetry? About Nadia, she is the author of The High Shelf, and her poetry and prose have appeared in more than 80 publications, including The New Yorker, American Poetry Review, Kenyon Review, Spirituality and Health, Lion's Roar, and the Yale Review. Nadia holds a PhD in English from Columbia University and is the founder of Align Your Story Writing School, which brings traditional literary and creative writing studies together with mindfulness, embodied practices, and social and environmental engagement. She offers meditations and free resources for writers. Welcome, Nadia, and thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. Really glad to be here with all of you. Thank you, Jen. And I will just dive in. So I thought I'd start with the opening poem from I Say the Sky. I thought I'd do something a little bit different, which is I find that at poetry readings, it can be hard to really follow a poem. It's nice to listen, but it can also be nice to read along. So I'm going to actually share my screen today, which is a little bit different, and see how that goes so that if you want to follow, you can. And I think you'll still be able to see me, but maybe before I do that, I'll just say a little bit about this first poem. This is the first poem in the book, and I like to start with it because it does set the questions of the book. It puts the questions of the book on the table, some of them at least. And I would say maybe the biggest question is, as some of the people who wrote about the book noted, how do I hold both suffering, loss, and wonder, beauty at the same time? How do we hold the full range of existence, human existence, species existence? And the book starts with kind of asking those questions. And as the book gets, as we go through the book, I get closer and closer to what's happening within my own body. So I want to kind of take you on that journey with me. So the first line of this poem is also the title, and I'll share my screen now so you can see. Feel free, if you don't want to read along, of course, just to listen. I think it is such a beautiful dawn, and my mind, which wants to hold things as they are, cannot hold this morning, 1st of April, spring too early this year by 3 weeks. The daffodils of my city, spurred forward by the warmth. Cannot hold Brett, gone. Patrizia, gone. Not the marching clouds, not the sky that is perched, unaltering, above the clouds, not the methane leaks, not the whales suffering the piercing sounds of boats. I reach out my hands, one and then the other, spread my fingers as light falls through them. So this next poem is a narrative, and I wrote it this is my husband's grandmother through marriage, his stepfather's mother, and she was a survivor of the Holocaust. And I think that's all you need to know. I think the poem will be understandable. Smaller even than last week, she sits in her wheelchair, huddled over the oxygen that is pumped through a paper cup up in the direction of her nose as she struggles for breath, ready or not for the great transition. Her son greets us with jokes, asks about our New Year's resolutions, about whether we saw the new store on the road before we turned off to the nursing home. She opens her eyes, grunts, tells him to stop. This is important work. We get up, put Mozart's flute concerto on the old boom box, and do not talk. I don't know if this is the proper material for a poem, the almost death of an old lady I have almost come to love. Why not? Why hesitate? And why call what I feel for her almost love? What stone within my heart prevents me from giving myself completely? At night, when we are home, I think of her beautiful face, her eyelids always elegant, her smile at my daughter the same as it has always been. I think of her desire to protect the young, her mother dying when she was 10 and the Nazis soon to take over Hanover, she and her sister surviving only because they were twins. Protection, what she did not get, what she could not entirely give her own children, the suffering seeping out. This is not a poem about escape. The great transition is not an escape, but a turn in which we meet the self we may not want to meet. And then what happens? Last year, at almost the same time, our friend's heart stopped for a moment. 2 months later, she saw shadows. They are coming, she said, terrified, fighting against them with all her force as I sat on her bed, the dark approaching, but nothing, not even her own 10-year-old twins, could keep her fastened to this life. Darling, forgive me. Forgive me for what? I want so badly to live, sometimes I forget that I am alive, that this is enough, even the fear, the regrets, that we have each other, our children, this moment, that everything is a part. Even this difficult dance, the body getting smaller, thinner, the lips getting chapped, dried out, the heart getting ready to stop. Put the music on. Praise the sky and the stones that also breathe into this moment, now, and then something else. So Kelly, I don't know if that was a coincidence, the praise the sky, or if you chose that consciously, or if it was, but there's some synchronicity there. Okay. So this next poem that I want to read is from a longer poem. It's a 3-part poem, and I'll just read the last part of the poem, and it's called Anxiety. And it takes place when I had 2 young kids, and there was a lot going on. So this is part 3 of a poem called Anxiety. What is missing in the house of my life, in the moment of my life, in the kitchen, opening the refrigerator door, putting away the milk, when the voice comes, and I try to turn it off. In the house of my life, where doing nothing is sitting down in the living room, in the house of my life on the couch, where I have turned off voice. Where in the moment, for 1 minute, I am alone, with nothing, doing nothing, no voice. And what is there then? Not nothing, but something creeping up. I say in the house of my life, I say in the moment of my life, in the me, which is something. If I sit perfectly on the couch, if I sit perfectly still on the couch, I am me. So sitting still is something, and moving also not a nothing into which I slip, for what is creeping up? For what is think that those days of so much activity and taking care of others and all the kind of to-do lists of both the home and also my ambitions and I was finishing up a graduate degree and writing and just all the many things. And 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 underneath all that external overmuchness, there was also something that was clouding that ability to really be present, to really have clarity, to come into my own voice that wasn't someone else's voice. And I think that my own writing, I can maybe stop my share for a moment, my own writing kind of brought me to a place where I could listen more deeply, where I could become present. Even before I had a meditation practice, um, I think my writing helped me kind of slow down, pay attention, and ask the kind of questions that are similar to what meditation asks, like what's happening? What's next? How are things interrelated? And that led me then to listening to my body more, and kind of writing through that then led me to recovering memories from my childhood that were difficult. Um, so I'll read you a poem. And what I normally do before I start to read is I normally invite the singing bowl. If you've worked with me before, been in workshops or meetings with me before, you've probably heard me sing it before. So maybe we can just take a moment now to reconnect with our breath and body. So come back to yourself after that anxiety poem. Come home to yourself. I wrote that poem many, many years ago. So one thing that was fun about writing this book is I wrote a lot of the poems in a few years when I wasn't really thinking of putting together a book, but I was writing these poems. And at a certain point I said, wow, I have a lot of poems. What are they saying? So I read them back, I put them together. It was like, oh, there's something coherent here. I think these want to be a book. And I put together a manuscript. And the manuscript felt pretty done, you know, pretty complete. I showed it to a few people. I got some feedback from writer friends, and then I felt like, well, you know, there's maybe something else. This book tells a story. I wanted to tell a story of kind of those questions at the beginning, and then coming into myself, listening to my body, and then where do I come at the end to kind of some more resolution. And at the last minute, I was like, you know, I have these other poems that I really liked that I had written in the past that hadn't gone into my first book, because my first book was the poems are very much of a piece. So I had these other poems that I really liked. And what if I just kind of put some of them throughout this new manuscript? And so I did that. And I was like, that was what I wanted for this book. And it was also a nice way um, for me to like incorporate my own life story, my own journey through the book. So people don't necessarily know which poems I wrote a long time ago. You can kind of tell from different periods, like the poem about the birth of my child was actually written a long time ago, because that happened a lot. He's pretty old now. But that poem, Anxiety, was one of those poems I put in at the end that was written when my kids were little, and kind of bring in that older self. So this is a poem that was written, the next poem I'm about to read, that was written with the majority, at the same time the majority of the poems in the book were written, but it's a poem about going back to memories from the past and how those memories come into the present. Because I think actually with meditation, sometimes meditation is about being present, but what we're present to is we're sometimes present to and can become aware of the ways in which we are carrying the past with us. And so then it's an opportunity to actually become aware of that, which I think my writing process helped me do. And then the page can also be a place that then can hold those stories instead of the body. So I will share my screen again. And I'll just give a little trauma warning for those of you who are sensitive. This is a poem that it doesn't talk explicitly about trauma, but it is a trauma poem. So I'll ring the bell again. And the small body. The leaves rustle in the breeze as I prepare dinner. The sunlight streams in, and I hear the blue jays' rattling call through the open window from the linden tree outside as my children do their homework at the table. And as I'm cutting carrots, the man comes again through the door. And still my small body in bed sleeping, in the other room, in bed sleeping. In the other room, sitting silent, the oriental rug, where my sister and I play with dolls. The piano I'll later practice, the long bookshelves. The past is the past, and the present, except for the ways it isn't. And I was safe, except for the ways I wasn't. And even into this moment, the ink spreads out from the very center of the dark, here, into this kitchen, this poem. I think it's Elizabeth Bishop who talked about the and in the poem, how we can build, it's and, right? Our experience is brought together by multiple things that go side by side. So yeah, I called it and the small body because it's a kind of adding up of different experiences next to each other. Knowing. The end of what I know occurs not at the end, but at the edge of the middle of things. Toys and plastic chairs lie scattered across the lawn, the picnic table spread under an arching beach. But these human signs can't speak of the necessary shift, and even the cloud that cuts the monotonous sky with a brilliant pink has nothing to do with this change. The particular, the compelling object breaks, and alone in place remains not the common master waving long, flamboyant arms, but a self subtler and altogether more dangerous. Out beyond courage and vanity, I look back into myself, like the silver bowled lake, or the deep, impervious dark. Maybe this one I'll just read to you. You can just listen. Okay. My throat is a fire, is a line of birds waiting to rise up from still water, is the earth dark and heavy with spring rain, is the air, as the mist lifts, sighing, ready to let go. I'll read this one, this is another short one. Outside, the sparrows are awake, and all the complications in my heart. I, who did not know how to love my own body, who mistook the world for a task, listen, one voice, and then another, amid the rustling of the leaves. I'll read just a few more. I'll share my screen again for this one. Okay, this one's power. And my daughter went to a sleepaway gymnastics camp that was run by a family on a lake. It was a very small, really friendly camp, all girls camp. And there were really hot nights, the girls would go skinny dipping in the lake, um, at night. And they called it special swimming. So that seemed like a lot of fun. And I wrote a poem about it. Power. I turn the questions over and over when I cannot sleep, when my mind will not turn off. The waters of the ocean creep up the shore. The temperature slides up half a degree, then more. The high glacial shelf in the Arctic breaks off. What is it that I want? At my daughter's camp at night, when it's hot in the dark, the girls take off their clothes at the docks at the lip of the lake for special swimming. I want to take off my clothes for special writing in a dark that is soft, in the water that will hold me, my body still a girl's, and the whole world before me, opening in song, the words not yet written on the page. Oh, letter by letter, as the oil, drop by drop, is coaxed from the earth, is held together, broken apart, taken into the guts of fish, their cells, our mouths, our milk. Dare we ask for what we really want? So I guess my hope is that poetry can be a space where we can bring together those internal experiences with the external experiences, a place to hold it all, to ask ourselves, what is it that our body wants and how is our body connected to everything else? And then from that place to be able to make something beautiful, but also take action. So maybe I'll also share in the chat, because a lot of these poems do have an environmental theme to them. And for me, environmental theme is also like a nonviolent theme, a way of living with respect for all beings and with nonviolence. And maybe I'll put a link in the chat for if you want to have a list of ways to take environmental action, since I feel like these poems are really talking about that. There's some resources there. And I will maybe end with one last really short poem that you can just listen to. Thank you all so much for your listening and attention. Onion. Wrapped in your own paper-thin gold, your roots shoot earthward, your top stretches to the sun. Bulb, full as birdsong. And this image on the cover is a little onion that's rooting down and stretching up. And it's maybe my little ars poetica of what I think we all do as creative beings, as humans, grounding, reaching up, and being full of birdsong. So thank you all for being here. If you're interested in my book, I see some questions. I don't, is it time for questions?
Nadia, I'll
Yeah.
post them for you. Yeah.
Now, before the open mic, is that how it goes?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. I will just say also that my own writing comes out of reading. And if you're interested in my book, it also comes with a free meditation and writing practice, 7 days that will inspire you to write 7 poems. And you can use these, it's 15-minute recordings with a meditation, a poem, a prompt, and then time to write. It's very generative. And I can send the link out for that as well. So if you buy the book, it comes with the book for free. I have a lot of other free resources on my website for writers that you can just sign up for in my free resource section, but this one particularly comes with the book if you're interested. Okay, I see questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Nadia, for that wonderful reading and the beautiful use of the singing bowl and the mention of all your free materials is wonderful. There were a couple of questions in the chat room, and I will cover those in our conversation together. Well, somebody, let's see, sorry, that was
I
Okay.
see. I see a
Tell
few
us.
questions.
Yep.
So let's see. What your process is like for
Yes.
writing poems. So actually, I offer meditation and writing prompts because that is what my process is like. I will often meditate before I write, and then I'll often read something. And I heard that Mary Oliver would read Rumi every morning. And at different times, I'll read different things, but I'll kind of go through periods where I'll read more of one writer than another. And so I'll often meditate, read something, and then write. And that's what I share with my students. And I partly do that. I partly share it with my students because I do it, but then because I share it with students and I see the results that my students have, that also reinforces that practice for me because it's a powerful practice. Um,
And then Carolyn asks, Nadia, are your voice and your space one and the same? So I'm not entirely sure what she means by that, but um,
yeah, can we come back to that question? Carolyn, maybe you could ask that. Um,
clarify that a little bit,
yeah,
if you would, Carolyn.
it's nice to see you here, Carolyn.
And Jen Minotti is asking about white space.
Yeah, so I love using white space in a poem, and I I I want I want there to be I want poems to be both containers and places of openings. And so the way I put the poem on the page is a little bit like a collage in some ways of how does the poem contain the space. And I think also with a meditation practice, kind of being aware of the spaciousness, but even within matter, that I want the poems to in some ways enact. Um, yeah.
Now, so that's a really interesting idea to have it be a container as well as an opening. I really appreciate that. I wanted to ask about the sort of the origin story of poetry for you, and maybe also the origin story of meditation. Obviously, they're very linked for you, these two practices. And I'm just curious about what would you say, where did poetry begin for me? And where did
Mhm.
meditation begin for me?
So I grew up with poetry and I didn't grow up with meditation. My dad would read poetry to me. My dad was a poet. I have a very difficult relationship with my father, but that was definitely, a gift that I got from him. It was also something I needed to get out from under him, so I needed to make it my own. So it was also like challenging in some ways. Um, and meditation, I think I partly came to meditation through yoga, actually. I think my yoga practices really helped me listen to my body. And then that quiet, that listening, that shavasana and yoga practice, oh, that's so interesting. I think I want more of that. And then I really started doing a more serious meditation practice when I kind of had a period in my mid 30s where I was doing a lot of personal healing and really working through that trauma story. And I needed a container. I needed some teachings. I needed meditation, and the teachings in particular of Thich Nhat Hanh were really, really helpful for me. Um, and so I would say that was kind of when I really got serious about meditation.
Um, Carolyn Hale asks, does your inner voice and inner body space coincide to help you write? Your
That's a
inner
really
voice
interesting
and your
question.
inner body space.
Yeah, I think so. I think what does it mean, the inner voice and the inner body? But yeah, because and Carolyn, we've worked together in classes, so you've heard me many times talk about listen to your body and um, connect with your body when you're writing. So yes, it's something that from the outside, someone would be like, what does that mean? But I think it's also something where once you start connecting with that inner voice and with that inner body, they're very related. Yeah.
Do you think, Nadia, that this is so you put a lot of emphasis on listening to your body. Is that um, was that in really inspired for you more by yoga or the trauma work? Perhaps a combination of those things. When you say bring your body into the poem, what are you talking about in terms of why you think that's important?
Um, well, I feel like they're two different questions. I mean, my particular path was, I can kind of come back to that in a minute, but I would say if everything we do happens through our body, pretty much. Well, first I'll also say that mind, body, these are imprecise terms. And what's it? You cut the mind off from the body, you have nothing, you're dead. So how can they possibly be separate? They're metaphors that are imprecise. Um, so so yeah, like what are we talking about anyway to begin with? But I think that inner listening, and so when we're writing, like if I say the sky, what does that look like? You know, if I say a sparrow, what is that sparrow doing? What is that sparrow singing? How is the language being received inside the body of the listener? Um, I want my poems to be experiential. I want them to move people. I want to like memories to come up of your own experience of, tasting something or whatever. Then the more personal answer is I needed to learn, like in my own life, I would say both the hard way and a beautiful way. Like I had an undiagnosed illness for years in my 20s, and I was only, it was partly a parasite, but it was also only when I really got clear on my story that it fully went away. Like I literally needed to figure out my story in order to get physically better. And also being a mom and being pregnant, that for me was a catalyst to pay attention. Like, wow, my body has a lot of wisdom. And I'd been in school for, my whole life, like learning to think. And I was like, I actually don't know anything about, like, I haven't, like, what does it mean to listen to my body? No one ever told me that. And here's
Mm,
my body creating this other human being.
mhm.
What's my heart doing here? Like, whoa, this is just amazing. So that's my personal story. Yeah.
So much of a movement of awakening of the body,
Mhm.
and that really comes across so much in your poems, and it's partly a big part of what you teach. I say the sky. I think that is the title is taken from one of the poems. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, and did you find that sky is mentioned throughout the book?
Yeah, that's a lot. Many.
And so what does sky mean to your body? Is that a question I can ask?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think it's really interesting, right? I like now I'm like I wrote a book called I Say the Sky. I have to write another book that has Earth in its title. I've been thinking a lot about I did an interview with Paul Hawken, who is a really amazing environmentalist, and he reminded us that ac across cultures, every culture says Mother Earth. Mother Earth, Father Sky, so like, why did I put the sky in my title? But it's also spacious. It's the birds fly in the sky. It's blue sky. It's I do have a Buddhist practice, so there's the kind of like um, image of sky of like that underlying blue sky. The storms can come in, but there's like kind of a clarity of sky underneath all things. And I think that was what I was writing towards.
You sort of hinted at a next book or a next project, Nadia. Do you have anything you want to say about it?
Well, I actually don't have any poems for that. I don't know. I'm actually working on a prose project now.
A
So
prose project. Yeah.
we'll see how it goes. I'm not talking about it yet until,
Okay, okay. Then I will
but
not
yeah,
press you on that.
thank you.
This has been really, really remarkable, Nadia. Just very, really wonderful to listen to you, to hear the poems, to see the poems, to hear you talking about what really matters to you, where these poems came from, and what you hope for us to receive. That I think many of us are commenting on what we've received. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
this.
you so much, Kelly. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank
And
you all, yeah, for your comments and attention, and I'm looking forward to hearing more poems. So yeah, thank you.
thank you. And so I will turn off the recording momentarily, but just a reminder that we'll be posting it tomorrow on our YouTube channel so we could hear and see and experience you reading them again. So thank you. I'll say hello to you again at the end of the session so that you have a chance to give a final word. And now we will move over to the open mic. And many of you know exactly how our open mic works. I'm going to call 3 names. And when it is your turn, just go ahead and unmute. We'll spotlight you. You have your 3 minutes. Please keep your readings to 3 minutes. And feel free again to support our readers by mentioning in the chat room what you appreciate about what they have shared. So we're going to start with Birdman 313 and then Sally Cavallero and then Principe Guidi Jr. So Birdman 313.
Yes,
Hello.
thank you. Good evening.
Hi.
Man, it's bad here. The weather is really bad, so hopefully I won't lose connection. But I'm gonna read a poem from my new book that was released last month. It's titled Outdoor Memories, and that's what mostly all these poems in this book about. And this one is Wandering Through the Fog. And I wrote this after being out in San Diego, spending some time on the beach. With outstretched arms, I reach out for peace and protection. I wandered through a misty fog in the early morning. The walk is refreshing because the air is cool. The rising fog dances on the ocean waves rolling by. The fog moves in from over the ocean towards the mountains as the night clouds disappear. There is so much beauty in the gray mist of the clouds. Some people feel sadness in the mist, while others experience inner peace. The fog blends in with the rocks, sky, ocean, and wet beach sand. I can feel the sun brush upon my skin as the fog begins to lift, melting into a misty vapor absorbed by the clouds. Walking in silence makes everything seem more relaxing, like dancing with the wind and laughing in the rain. Makes one feel wonderfully free without worries. This peace leaves a softness in your soul. Having no boundaries dissolve any confusion you may have. These feelings of serenity are liberating, creating much needed love, hope, and joy. Take a chance and wander through the fog, dance with the wind, and laugh in the rain and see